Hey, how you doing? Nick Digilio here, that's me. Thank you for checking out my YouTube channel. Thank you for checking out my Patreon page, if indeed you are on my Patreon page. I am the host of two podcasts with Radio Misfits Podcast Network, a really terrific podcast network that you need to check out for a variety of incredible, entertaining, informative, funny, great podcasts. And I have two of them. I have the Nick D podcast, which is a pop culture, movie review, entertainment review podcast with great guests and information, a lot of fun. And I also have a Saturday Night Live podcast called That Show Hasn't Been Funny in Years, an SNL podcast, which is a weekly deep dive into the classic sketch comedy show. So you should check those out. Those are both great, and they're both free. So you can check them out at radiomisfits.com. They're also available on every single platform where you can get your podcasts, from Apple to Amazon to Spotify, all of them. So That Show Hasn't Been Funny in Years, an SNL podcast, and the Nick D podcast, very similar to what I used to do on the radio with guests and entertainment and movie reviews and stuff like that. So please check those things out. Those are free. I also appear on Fridays on the Steve Cochran Morning Drive Show on WLS AM 890, The Big 89 in Chicago. That'll be on Friday mornings. I review new movies and hang out with the Steve Cochran Show and that great group with WLS AM 890. Again, that's also free. So are these videos. So because this stuff is free, I was hoping you could throw a little cash in the Patreon bucket. That would be very nice of you. You get extra bonus stuff. There are videos there already that are bonus material that you'll have access to if you donate and become a patron. So please, donate what you can. Everything I do here is free, and it would be cool if you helped out. So it's patreon.com/NickDShow. So donate right now, patreon.com/NickDShow. Okay. Treat Williams passed away. And that's obviously what this video is about. When certain celebrities pass away, some of them hit. It's always sad. It's always a loss because a human being has died. And if they are a celebrity and you know them through their work in the world of entertainment, whether it be as a writer, an author, or a playwright, or an actor, an actress, a musician, any of that stuff, if their work meant something to you, their death will affect you in a certain way. Treat Williams was never, received with the recognition and the proper critical analysis that he deserved while he was alive. Treat Williams is one of those guys who worked forever. Started working in the mid-'70s, started on stage, started doing TV stuff, made a name for himself in films in the late 70s, and then continued on through his death at 71 because of a motorcycle accident. He died in a motorcycle accident yesterday. He was only 71. And he worked in TV, and he worked on stage. I mean, this guy was a consummate professional actor. But he was always, he was there. People knew him. People remember him from certain movies. He did have, supporting roles that were memorable. He had lead roles that were memorable. He did comedy. He did action. He did heavy drama. He did series television. He did everything. And he was one of those guys that was always reliable. He was one of those actors that if you saw his name on the credits, you go, well, at least there's going to be one good performance in whatever this thing is. But so as a reliable, character, workman-like actor, he fit the bill completely. But I think he was more than that. I think Treat Williams was a guy whose talent was never recognized as much as it should have been. I think he was a criminally underappreciated actor, and I think one of the best we've ever had. And he passed away. And sometimes, like when celebrities pass away, like I was saying at the beginning of this, is that sometimes they hit you pretty hard. And this one hit me pretty hard. The last time I remember something hitting me like in that way was when Fred Ward passed away last year. Fred Ward, one of my favorite character actors of all time, always made every movie better. And again, one of those guys who worked in television and in movies and on stage consistently for years and years and years, and always played very memorable roles, had a great energy and a great character feel to him when he was on screen. And he was a guy that everybody knew, but he never received the proper praise and recognition that he deserved while he was alive. And the same thing can be said for Treat Williams, who had movie star looks. He's a beautiful guy. When he first burst onto the screen in the 70s, he was just extraordinarily beautiful guy. Had, hunky good looks and very leading man type looks and quality to him. But he had, besides the beautiful looks and the incredible eyes and just everything about him. He had a lot of talent to back up those looks. And then he went on to pick weird characters and great characters. And I just wanted to go down some of the stuff that Treat Williams did in movies and in television that you should check out in case you missed it. And again, I personally think that Treat Williams was ridiculously underrated, ridiculously underappreciated, and that should be changed. If you don't know some of his work, you should watch it. You should rediscover it or discover it for the first time and just realize what an amazingly talented and incredible actor Treat Williams was. Just a great, great actor. A lot of people remember him from TV work like Everwood. He was a regular on Everwood, a terrific CW show where he did wonderful work on that. He was able to, to play the father and to play the loving guy on a CW show. He was great at it. He was, people loved him on it. He appeared as himself on The Simpsons. He did great work on that. He was in Chicago Fire here, and I know people who have worked with him. I know people who worked with Treat Williams on Chicago Fire. And in addition to being a tremendously talented actor, who could play villains and characters and leading men and all that kind of stuff. So in addition to being just a great actor on screen, he was apparently a really lovely man to work with and a very nice man who loved his family, who talked about them all the time. All the stories that I've read online and all the stories that I've heard personally from people who actually worked with him one-on-one in Chicago Fire and in other stuff, everybody speaks very highly about how incredibly nice he was, how sweet, and how he was really good to the crew. Like, he remembered everybody's names, all the PAs, people who worked, the staff behind the scenes, the crew on movies and on television have nothing but wonderful things to say about Treat Williams because he treated those people with the same respect and equal dignity that you would with like a big star that you're working with. Treat Williams cared about the crew. He cared about everybody who was working on the movies and television shows he worked on. He knew that people's names. He took the time to do that. A lot of actors don't do that. A lot of actors don't give a shit about the crew and don't even acknowledge them. Treat Williams went out of his way to be kind and to speak to everybody on those sets, even if he didn't have scenes with them, even if he didn't work with them. I hear nothing but amazing first-hand stories of people who worked with him on Chicago Fire. He was also in an amazing TV show that David Milch did. David Milch, the man who created the greatest... David Simon. He also worked with David Milch, but David Simon, who created The Wire, the greatest television show of all time. And he also worked with Treat Williams on We Own This City, which he was great on, which also kind of a throwback to his work in a seminal cop movie from the 80s. So he did that stuff in TV series. He made a lot of TV movies. He played Stanley Kowalski in 1984 in an incredible version of Streetcar. With Anne Margaret played Blanche, and Beverly D'Angelo played Stella. Beverly D'Angelo being reunited with Treat Williams because they were in Hair together. He did a fantastic Stanley Kowalski. He was fantastic in it, terrific. I think he actually won an Emmy or was nominated for an Emmy for it. He's been nominated for a few independent, Spirit Awards and a few awards here and there, both in television. He got some Golden Globe nominations and some Emmy nominations, but never got the Oscar nomination or the Oscar win that he deserved. So he was great in Streetcar as Stanley in 1984. He's played, real life figures. He played Joe Dempsey. He played J. Edgar Hoover. Did a much better job than Leonardo DiCaprio did. He played Michael Ovitz in The Late Shift, which was based on the book, about the legendary war between Leno and Letterman and all that stuff that went down. He played Michael Ovitz in that, one of my favorite Treat Williams performances. If you've not seen The Late Shift, which is a terrific movie about the late night wars between Leno and Letterman, one of the best performances in it. I mean, Kathy Bates is amazing, but Treat Williams as Michael Ovitz steals the fucking movie, and he's only in about a third of it. It's a small supporting role, but he stands out like he does in almost everything he did. But if you want to see him in a great portrayal of Michael Ovitz, check out The Late Shift. And then he would do a lot of TV movies and things like that, and he made a name for himself as an older guy when he reached his later 60s and stuff. He would play father figures or, ex-husbands and stuff like that. And he worked on a couple of Hallmark movies, a couple of holiday Hallmark movies, which have become tradition for a lot of people in America. He's in the Christmas House movies, and people love him in those movies, and he loved working on the Hallmark movies, and he loved his family. Now, I did not follow him on Twitter, but everything I've read and all the posts and some of the tweets that people are retweeting and posting about him, Apparently, he was lovely to follow on Twitter. Very humorous, very funny, and very revealing, and always featured in his tweets his family. You know, like the wife, the kids, the grandkids, everything. He loved his family. He loved living on a farm. He loved doing all the things that you would do on land and sharing that with his family. And apparently he was, and I've seen some of the tweets, apparently following him on Twitter was a lovely daily thing. He would tweet a lot. He tweeted on the day he died a couple of things about working, on the land that he owned. And he loved his family and emphasized how much joy he got just from being with his family. Now, the films that he did. He broke in the 70s. The first movie that I remember seeing him in was Hair, but he was also, a couple of years earlier, he was in a movie version of The Ritz, where he was basically shirtless and he was hunky and became like a huge gay icon because the gay community really loved him at that point, and women went nuts over him. And then Hair was the first huge role that he had, and he's fucking great in Hair. He plays Burger, the hippie that leads the activities that happen. He can sing, he can dance, he's got incredible, memorable numbers in that. He did I Got Life, he sang Manchester, England. I mean, it goes on and on and on. He's amazing in that. Milos Forman directed it. It's one of my favorite movie musicals of all time. Changes the ending of the original musical, and actually takes the musical and adds much more heft to it. Like Milos Forman and their screenwriters actually added a story to it, because the play itself is just kind of rambling, a mess. It's wonderful, filled with great songs and a great time period capturer. But the movie has more heft to it. I love the movie. It's one of my favorite movie musicals. And one of the reasons I love it so much is because of Treat Williams. If you have not seen Treat Williams in the film version of Hair playing Burger, then you're missing out on one of the best movie musical performances of all time. Seriously, of all time. He's amazing in it, and he is the emotional core of it. And what happens at the end of that movie involving his character is absolutely devastating and politically impactful and emotionally powerful. It's a great movie musical, and Treat Williams is great in it. In the same year, he starred in 1941, which is one of my favorite Steven Spielberg movies, written by the genius Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. And he plays Stretch Satowski in that movie, who is a soldier, he's kind of the villain in it. He wants the leading lady to himself, and he's the bad guy. Wendy Jo Sperber, the late great Wendy Jo Sperber, plays a woman who's in love with him, and there is the incredible jitterbug dance sequence contest that he is a main part of, and he dances in it, he does fight choreographies in it. He's very funny in 1941. And among the 9 million people that are in that movie and all the huge, mega stars that are all over the place in that movie, he fucking stands out. And we're talking about some major league comedic actors and actresses in that movie, and some great big stars in that movie. And one of the most memorable performances in like a movie that has hundreds of them is Treat fucking Williams' Stretch in 1941. And again, the jitterbug dance sequence that he's a part of, one of the best sequences that Steven Spielberg has ever done. So in 1 year, he did Hair, and he did 1941. A couple of years after 1941, he made a movie that, to me, stands as the best thing he's ever done. And I'm gonna save that for last. But outside of that, he would go on to he did The Pursuit of D.B. Cooper, which was based upon the guy who disappeared with a whole bunch of money and they never found him. And it was a fun adventure, goofy little throwaway movie, but he's charming and funny and awesome in The Pursuit of D.B. Cooper. He was in Once Upon a Time in America. He got to work with Sergio Leone, one of the many villains he plays over the years. He played Jimmy O'Donnell, who is like the Irish mafia villain guy who spends most of the movie attempting to be killed. Like, there's assassination attempts on him like 27 times in this movie. He's fucking great in it. And again, you got De Niro, you got James Woods, you got an incredible cast in Once Upon a Time in America, which is considered one of the greatest gangster movies of all time, directed by Sergio Leone, for God's sake. One of the greatest movies ever. And again, Treat Williams right in there as the villain, standing toe-to-toe with all the big-ass actors, working with a director like Sidney Lumet I'll get to in a little bit, but working with a director like Sergio Leone, and not only, being able to hold his own, but fucking killing everybody on stage, or on screen. So Once Upon a Time in America, he's amazing in that. Flashpoint with Chris Christopherson, which was a conspiracy thriller about the Kennedy assassination and much, much more. He's kind of a shady dude in that, and he and Chris Christopherson rock in that movie. Terrific movie, Flashpoint, if you've not seen that. Dead Heat, a ridiculous comedy that I saw at the drive-in twice. It was him and Joe Piscopo, and they play two cops he plays a cop who gets killed and comes back from the dead. So we got to play a zombie, and he's great in that. Goofy-ass movie. It's a throwaway, but he's funny in it. And then there is Smooth Talk. This is one of the best movies he's ever made. Joyce Chopra directed this movie. It stars Laura Dern as a kind of promiscuous, or wants to be promiscuous, teen who is discovering her sexuality, a teenage girl who's discovering her sexuality and pushing it to the limits where her parents don't want her to do it, and she's pushing sexuality, very curious about it. And in comes this weird dude and much older gentleman, a very sexy, creepy little guy named Arnold Friend, who begins to call her out on her sexuality, and it becomes very deeply disturbing and very, 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 very strange. And he is creepy as shit in this movie, Smooth Talk. An amazing film about teen sexuality and discovering one's own adulthood in a woman's body. And Laura Dern, one of her best performances ever. A very, very creepy movie that is very, very deep and significant. And Treat Williams succeeds in being incredibly charming, incredibly sexy, and absolutely evil and creepy and skin-crawling in it. It's one of his best performances, and the scenes between Treat Williams and Laura Dern in Smooth Talk are among the best two-person scenes you will ever see in a movie, ever. Smooth Talk. Check it out. Heart of Dixie, another great movie where he co-starred with a bunch of incredible young actresses in that. Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead was one of the many idiotic Quentin Tarantino knockoffs that came out in the mid-'90s where everybody was trying to copy the goddamn, Tarantino style. They're all a bunch of horse shit. But Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, not a very good movie. Andy Garcia had a good cast, but Treat Williams is the best thing in it. He plays a psycho villain in it. He's the best thing in it. I don't think it's a very good movie, but if you want to see Treat Williams be nuts and be a good villain, which he was capable of doing, and be just fucking weird, Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, he's pretty great in that. The Phantom, which was Billy, you should listen to your friend Billy Zane, attempt to make a big comic book series out of that. He plays like a villain in that, too. Treat Williams, he's kind of fun in that. The Substitute. He was in The Substitute 2 and 3. These were kind of straight-to-video exploitation movies where he was a substitute teacher. Tom Berenger starred in the original one, and then Treat Williams took over and did 2 and 3, where he, cops going after the bad students with guns and shit. Ridiculous movies, but they're a lot of fun. He's having a blast in it, playing a tough guy, exploitative substitute teacher. Those are fun. Miss Congeniality 2, plays an FBI guy in that, who is very, very funny. It's not a very good movie, but he's great, and he works terrifically off of all the other comedic actors, especially Sandra Bullock, who he's great in. He's also in 127 Hours. He's very good in that, got a small role in that. And then he would do small roles here and there in a ton of other movies. He would continue to work consistently, both in television and in film, until he just passed away. And I think he had a couple of movies that were in the can already, so we'll see a couple of more films from Treat Williams. But I wanted to go back to a couple of other movies. One of the most underrated, just flat out ridiculous sci-fi horror adventure movies ever made is a fantastic movie about a giant monster that terrorizes the seas, and it's a movie called Deep Rising. And it features Famke Janssen, the great Kevin J. O'Connor, my buddy Kevin J. O'Connor, and the star of the movie is Treat Williams. And it is one of those movies that Stephen Sommers directed it, and it's one of those movies that when it came out, people were like, "What the fuck is this?" The tagline for it is "Full Scream Ahead," and it's about a giant, terrifying sea horror monster creature, and about this, it's about a bunch of people trying to do a heist, but they're interrupted by a giant, horrifying sea creature. That's basically it. It is ridiculous, and it is absolutely, without question, one of the most unapologetically and shamelessly fucking entertaining big monster action movies you will ever see. It's hilarious. The special effects are terrific. It is completely ridiculously over the top from the first frame to the last frame. And everybody in it is great. Everybody is funny. Everybody understands the comedic and horrific and action tone of it, and they play it to the hilt. And Treat Williams fucking rules in Deep Rising. If you have not seen Deep Rising, you should. And a lot of people look at the video art on it, or when it came out on video, and people were like, "What the hell is this?" And they bring it home and go, "Oh my God, that's the best time I've had watching a movie all year." It is completely over the top. Horror, action, big monsters, special effects, ridiculous dialogue, catchphrases. It is fucking unapologetically entertaining. It is a popcorn movie to the 10th degree, and Treat Williams rules in it. It's actually one of my favorite Treat Williams performances of all time. Obviously, not destined to win any awards or anything. It's a B movie, and it revels in the B moviness of it. I fucking love Deep Rising. It is fantastic on every level, enormously entertaining, and Treat Williams rules in it. But the movie, in addition to all of this other great stuff that you can check out, and go to his IMDb page and look through those titles, because if his name is on the credits of a movie, like I said, he's good in it. So you can't go wrong. If you see Treat Williams on the name of anything, whether it's TV or whether it's series, films, whatever it is, if you see Treat Williams' name on it, fucking watch it, because he's going to be good in it. But the movie that I mentioned Hair, 1941, D.B. Cooper, Once Upon a Time in America, Flashpoint, Smooth Talk, Dead Heat, Heart of Dixie, Things to Do in Dead, Phantom, Dead Rising, Speed. Yes, I mentioned everything except this one. From 1981, Sidney Lumet's masterpiece about corrupt cops and a cop who, like Serpico, goes under and rats on his cop friends. Wears a wire. Based on a true story. He played Detective Danny Cielo in Prince of the City. Now, came out in 1981, and I remember I saw it at the Davis Theater. I was in high school. I was a sophomore or junior in high school. I can't remember. But I was in high school when I saw it. And I was a huge fan of all those Sidney Lumet New York movies, the cop movies. And this came with a lot of great reviews. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it played at a couple of film festivals, including Cannes. And Treat Williams was being, like, touted as, like, oh my God, this is the performance of the year. This is one of the best performances ever. One of the best performances in a Sidney Lumet cop movie ever. And that's a lot, man. That's a lot. Because when you're talking about New York Sidney Lumet movies and performances that you have to, be measured against, that's fucking huge. Now, I remember when it came out, went to the Davis Theater. A couple of my buddies from high school, we went, and man, oh man, I mean, it's an epic. It's 3 hours long, and Treat Williams is at the center of it. He plays a corrupt New York cop based on a true story who, against his better judgment, decides that he is indeed going to wear a wire and expose the corruption in the New York City Police Department, and that also means exposing his friends and ratting on his friends, and what that does to his life, what that does to his reputation, and what that does to his inner self, the guilt and the horrible things that happen. It is a remarkable movie. A movie that actually Brian De Palma was supposed to direct and then ended up not doing it. And Brian De Palma would go on to do Blowout, where he would include a subplot in Blowout. If you watch Blowout, he would include a very Prince of the City subplot involving people getting killed because they're wearing wires. So he was still working on Prince of the City. And that script went through a whole bunch of different directors. Lumet took it, and then he dropped out of it. They had a whole bunch of actors who were attached to it at first. De Palma was ready to go, and then he got fired at the last minute. And then Lumet came back and directed it, De Palma was okay, because he went on to direct, one of the greatest American films ever made, Blowout, and include some Prince of the City stuff in there as kind of a fuck you to the people who fired him from Prince of the City. But Prince of the City itself ended up being directed by Sidney Lumet, and it's one of Sidney Lumet's best movies. Without question. It did not make a ton of money at the box office. It was 3 hours long. It did not feature a giant actor like Al Pacino. It was Treat Williams. Like, Treat Williams, who's this guy? Is that the guy from Hair? Is that the goofball from 1941, the bomb that Spielberg directed? Who is this guy? Well, if you have not seen Prince of the City, you have not seen one of the greatest American acting performances in the history of cinema. Treat Williams' performance in Prince of the City, which is a great epic motherfucking Sidney Lumet New York police drama, and that's as good as it gets. As good as it fucking gets. Sidney Lumet, New York police, it doesn't get better than that. And it's as good as any of the other stuff that Lumet did. It's as good as Dog Day Afternoon. It's as good as Serpico. It's as good as any of that stuff that he did. And Treat Williams is unbelievable in it. It is a remarkable performance. It is a heavy performance. It's a demanding performance. It's an exhausting performance. It's emotional. It's 3 hours long. He's in virtually every fucking scene. He carries a 3-hour New York cop Sidney Lumet drama and carries it magnificently. Treat Williams in Prince of the City is one of the greatest performances in the history of cinema. Period. And I know I speak in a lot of hyperbole. People who know me know that. But this isn't hyperbole, it's fucking fact. Treat Williams' performance in Prince of the City is one of the best performances any human being has ever given. Ever. It is a remarkable performance. The fact that he did not get nominated for an Academy Award, let alone he should have won. He got nominated for a Golden Globe. I believe he got nominated for some festival awards. But he did not get the Oscar nomination. And it's ridiculous. And it was because it was a movie that I think Orion released it, and they were going through some financial issues, and the movie didn't get a very good release. It was 3 hours long. And, you know, there were a lot of other movies that came out in 1981 that were much more, you know, movies that were pushed more for the Academy Awards than Prince of the City. And as a result, it's one of these performances that has been largely ignored, at least in terms of like the kind of critical and award praise that he should have gotten. But it's out there. And if you have not seen it, if you have seen it, then you know already. You know how fucking amazing Treat Williams is in Prince of the City. And you know how great Prince of the City is. Just in the simplest of terms, Prince of the City is one of the best movies of the 80s, by far one of the best movies of the 80s, and an incredible, sterling example of the kind of amazing shit that Sidney Lumet made. This is one of Sidney Lumet's best movies, and that's saying a lot. This guy's directed some of the greatest movies of all time, and this ranks right up there. So, you want to pay tribute to Treat Williams, there's a ton of stuff out there. A lot of TV series, a lot of TV movies. You want to go the Hallmark route, that's fantastic. You want to go back and look at some of his lovely tweets, that's great. You want to watch the TV shows that he did, like Everwood, Chicago Fire, and other stuff like that, fantastic. A ton of great movies. But if you really want to see the greatest performance that Treat Williams has ever given, and one of the greatest performances that any actor has ever given in a movie ever, and you want to see one of the greatest movies of all time, Prince of the City. Don't forget it. Always remember it. Treat Williams passed away. He was only 71 years old, died in a motorcycle accident. A horrible, huge loss to the world of entertainment and film and TV and stage. An incredibly talented, gifted, enormously gifted actor who could do anything. But if you really, really, really are like, man, I only want one performance, just give me one performance. Prince of the City, where he played Danny Cielo. A remarkable movie that will blow you away emotionally, intellectually, and the ending of the movie is absolutely devastating. God damn it. So, Treat Williams, one of my favorite actors, and I will never forget seeing him for the first time in Hair. I was like 14, and I was like, who the fuck is that guy? He rules. And he did rule. So anyway, rest in peace, Treat Williams, man. One of the greatest, most confident actors of all time. He's going to be missed. Anyway, check out Prince of the City and other really cool stuff.